Duncan. And we're talking, speed, depth, everything. My name is Marshall Duncan. I'm originally from Compton, California. That's where I grew up, born and raised. I've been in pigeons since I was 12 years old. I'm 60 years old now, so it's almost 50 years, 48 years. And I got started in rollers as a kid, riding my bike around Compton, California, hitting corners and just looking at birds from, all the backyard guys, in Compton, it was a thing, every other block or every block you had, guys that had pigeons, so at that time it was, who had the deepest birds, and that's basically how I got started. I've been competing with birds since I started, my first competition was 17, so I competed for about 10 years, and then I took about a 10-year break from competition, mostly, doing business things, just, kind of stepped away from the competition thing. Then in the year 2000, I got back, and so I've been competing again since 2000.
Look at that. Piano tip.
He'll knock a couple of those. He don't do it every roll, but we got to get that out of his blood. Some of the top guys that I got an early start because the guy that lived across the street from me was Arnold Jackson's brother. And so, he saw me, raising birds and stuff. We never really, we Mr. Jackson, kind of thing, but we never really talked birds. He had birds before I got in birds, and by the time I was old enough to have birds, he didn't have them anymore because they were stealing his birds and, that kind of thing. It just, I guess got to be too much. But he saw me go from trumpeters and fantails and tumblers and, a bunch of different birds to rollers. And he looked out the door, and all of a sudden I got birds that are dropping, and so we ended up being buddies. And he goes, "Hey, let me introduce you to my brother," and turned out to be Arnold Jackson. And Arnold's been I met him when I was 14 years old, so he's been a friend of mine, pigeon buddy, for most of my life, Yeah, so I went to school with Johnny Isabel's son, and so we were buddies. Met Johnny, and he helped me out a lot too, just getting started. He was in the CRS club, and yeah, between Johnny and Arnold, that's where I got my start. I first started competing. I was I think I was 17 years old. Willie Wright and Johnny, Willie Wright and Johnny got me into the CRS club. So Johnny Isabel, I remember being riding my bike over there, and he had these individual pens. It had to have been about 22 individuals alongside his garage wall. And he got a few birds from Frank Lavin, and he had his own birds and stuff, but he just put these pairs down. And this one pair laid right away, and the other ones were just getting going, and so he was going to toss the eggs, you know, and so I said, hey, can I have them, you know, and he goes, sure. So we got one of those little yellow margarine, you know, containers, and put cornmeal in it, and then put the eggs in there, you know, real, you know, softly in there, you know, and put the top on, and I rode home with them, you know, on my bike, and one of those birds, you know, one of those eggs hatched, the other one didn't, I, you know, fostered them out, but man, that was a rolling pigeon, man. I mean, everybody was coming around to see. They was calling him the Silver Shadow. He's a lavender red bar, but yeah, he was nice. And then Arnold Jackson, you know, he blessed me with a Garcia cock that he wasn't using anymore. This was a 1978 bird, and then he had a Full House hen. That was his line, Full House Blue. And the name Full House came because the cockbird that he had got from Doug Thorley, the band number was 22333, a Full House hen, and so that's how he named his line Full House. Give you a little background on Doug Thorley. He was that millionaire that if you go to Pensum's record books, because they're still around, you know, he had pairs in there that he said not for sale at any price. And Doug Thorley, he was the owner of Thorley Headers. They're still around today. Those are the race car headers. And so he's a millionaire back then. And so these birds were not for sale at any price, but Doug would rent them. So he'd cash him out to use them and then give them back. And so Arnold was able to get birds from Doug Thorley that nobody else could get. Everybody else was chasing 514 and 119 and all that, and Arnold was getting birds directly from the top birds that Pensum wasn't even letting out of his flock. And so I had access to those as a 14-year-old kid. So anyways, I took that Full House bird and put it on that Garcia cock, and then I took that, that lavender cock went back to Lemeyer stuff. And so I had another friend of mine that I met. He was a younger guy. He actually flew out birds for a couple of the guys that were in the CCRC club. And so he had some Garcia pigeons over there too. And his name was Kim Moore. So I got a couple pair from him. And so I was creating a hybrid vigor and didn't even know it as I was a kid. So I had the Pensum Thorley pigeons, I had the Garcia pigeons, and so I crossed all those birds together, and I was killing the whole neighborhood. I mean, I had people come, grown adults, you know, my mom was like, who are these men in the front yard? You know, it's like, you know, they was coming to see my team go, you know. So I remember one time I went over Johnny's house. I was like 16 at this point. No, I was, between 16 and 17, because I had gotten my first truck. And so I rolled by Johnny's house, and he had another guy there, you know, birding out with him. Turned out to be Willie Wright. And so I told him, man, the team is rolling right now. They're on fire. And they said, okay, well, let's roll. So Johnny and Willie came by the house, and I kicked them out, and they went to work. And Willie said, damn, these birds are good enough to compete in our club. And that was the CRS club at that time. So Willie said, those birds are good enough to compete in our club. That was the CRS club at that time. So at that time, you know, you had all the heavy hitters. You know, you had Frank Lavin, you had Bill Areola, Bobby Reese, Willie Wright, Richard Espinosa, Eddie Scott. You know, it was a nice sized club. I mean, you had Mike the Russian, Pete the Russian. Wow, I'm seeing all these pictures, faces. I'm not getting the names, but anyway, it was a predominant club at that time. And so Willie and Johnny, you know, they got me in the club. They sponsored me into the club, and my first year that I flew at 17 years old, I came in second place. So that was like, you know, a big thing. So, you know, came out on top on that. As I said in that magazine artist, so that was a ride. That was a fun ride, you know. And from there on out, I just stuck with those birds, and you know, I did a lot of reading, and you know, but you know, stuff that I learned in biology and you know, that kind of thing, as far as you know, how I was gonna, you know, create my family. Didn't know I was gonna create a family, but I really didn't do a whole lot of switching and stuff, because you know, the birds were doing what I wanted them to do. And so you know, from there on, I just, you know, built on that family, and that's where I'm at today. This was my holdover team from 2023. So this is one of the teams that haven't been chased, you know, incessantly by the birds of prey. I got them out late after the season, once you know the skies kind of cleared up a little bit, and so I'm thinking, come this next season, 2025, they should be a force to be reckoned with. I flew them a couple times for competition this year, just club competition, and you know, they did pretty good, and I've gotten some really nice breaks with them. You know, they're just younger than my old bird team, so they're a little less dependable. You know, sometimes they'll come out and kill it, and then sometimes they'll go, oh, not today. You know, so that's the difference between a seasoned old bird team and a young bird team. This is the old bird team. You got some monster heat, right? And we're talking, you know, speed, depth, you know, everything. And then this is the A team also. These are the backups. So the thing about having an A team, I got 22 birds over there, and then I got 10 over here. And so, like what I was saying earlier, you know, sometimes a bird just needs a break. Mm-hmm. You know,
so you got to replace
they're solid pigeons. They might be 3 years old, been doing it 3-4 years old, and you know, it's like, I'm not going to cull him. You know, just needs a break. And so I just, you know, put one of the reserves in, because all of these are solid pigeons. So if I need to, and that's another thing, you know, when I'm going into a competition, I'm watching the birds, and I mean, they may roll, and they may roll good, but they got to go on the break. So I'm looking not for birds that are rolling, because they wouldn't even be in the team if they didn't roll. So now I'm looking for birds who's breaking from the front of the team. You know, are my front birds breaking? Are they initiating the break? If the birds in the middle are initiating the break, those ones in the front are going to miss the break. So I'm paying attention to who's in the middle, who's in the rear, who's in the front. And it's really easy. I mean, you can watch them and watch them and mark them and stuff like that to figure out who's flying at the front, because you always have your front birds, your middle birds, and that's how you make up a team. And that's what they do. But if you look at your birds in the kit box, your front pigeons are always at the top, and your middle pigeons, and that's because of their strength, and that's, you know, that's where they're at. You know, so your front birds are going to be at the top perches. Your middle birds. And then, and if you look at that, and you look at your birds in the air, that's how it works. So if I'm replacing a bird that's in the front, that's not initiating the break, I'm not going to initiate it. I'm not going to replace him with another front pigeon. I know my front pigeons, because now this team is already working. Now I'm bringing in another bird that wants to be in the front, but he wasn't in the front before, and now this other bird goes, who are you? And now they're competing. And so now they're flying faster, trying to get to the front. They'll start flying higher, because they're, you know, they're competing for that front spot. And I mean, eventually you'll get them to calm down, but if you're going into a competition, you don't want to be dealing with that at that time. So if I'm replacing a bird going into a competition that's not breaking from the front, I'm going to take a bird that I know flies in the middle to replace that bird. I still got 20 birds, but I'm not replacing it with a front pigeon. And so that's how you build a team. And then when you're going into a competition, you don't want to be pulling the wrong bird out or replacing it with the wrong bird, I guess I should say. So these are the old birds. I can pull out a couple of the ones that are blurring out. I mean, I've got some that are blurring out. They're going through a molt right now. Yeah, these guys are molting, so I don't know if you want to handle him. You just kind of loosen up on your grip a little bit, but you'll feel him. Feeling vibrating. It's like he's buzzing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was at his loft and he was telling me he went in and grabbed a bird, and he's like, this is he said, evaluate this for me. This is my best bird. And so he grabbed the bird and handed it to me, and I mean, he looked, had muscle in it, and looked pretty good in the eye, and then I went, I just kind of relaxed my hands, and he was dead. There was no buzz, and I was like, I got to be truthful. It's like, nah, I'd have to see him fly, and he said, no way, this is up, and then he went and looked at the band and goes, oh shit, that's the wrong bird. And then he went and pulled the one that he was talking about, and he was vibing. I was like, okay, all right, so my best birds, the ones that really put on the speed, that look like a baseball in the air, the ones that have the frequency, the real deal. When I grab them, don't want to go too tight. I mean, you can start off tight, but then you kind of relax. Once you relax, you feel the bird buzzing. It's like he's got a little buzz in it, going bzzz. It feels like that. He's vibrating. Okay. And I've seen it too many times where, I'm at somebody's house and I go, hey, let me see that bird. He's putting up a bird that's just killing it in the air, and I handle him and he's buzzing. Mm. Every time I've seen a bird, I mean, I've seen birds roll. I've seen all kinds of different types of roll and what have you, but the real deal, the one, and they're always vibing. They always got that buzz. Okay, so as far as the eye goes, I don't pay a whole lot of attention to that anymore. Back in the day when I was building the family, I was really, really keen on that. Now, like this guy, his eye is, he's an orange-eyed bird, and that pupil is basically round. But if you look closely, it's pulling towards the front. It's not dead center. And I like those birds that have more of an oval pupil versus one that's just sitting dead center. The eye itself, I really don't pay much attention to the eye itself. When I'm looking at expression, it's completely different than just the eye. You got the calm demeanor, you got the wild demeanor, and then you got the eye where some people just call them like a fish eye, where you kind of compare it to a fish's eye. It's just it's not really showing you anything. It's just kind of almost like dead, But when I'm looking at expression, I'm looking at intelligence. And if you're just getting into it, or if you're really not paying attention, or a little bit of both, you really can't do it. It takes years of looking at birds that roll, and then they can't handle it anymore. They'll roll, and then they'll go off and fly somewhere else, and that kind of thing.